Hey guys, Joe here. So in this video, I want to talk about what I would personally do if I had to start completely from scratch and start a brand new contracting business. Okay, if you don't know my story, I owned a fence company for 7 years, built that from scratch, and when we ended up selling it, we were doing a little over $2 million a year in revenue. And at that time, I was working maybe 3 to 4 hours a week, something like that, right? And then sold that, and now I supply fencing. And actually, I work a hell of a lot more hours, but I love doing it. So, if I was doing it all over again, number one is I 100%, without a doubt, would not install what I sold. So that whether if I started another fence company, if I started a deck company, if I started a kitchen remodels, a plumbing business, you name it, I would not, without any hesitation, would not install what I sell. Okay. The reason for that is a few things. Number one is you are going to make way more money per hour selling than you would installing, right? So, as an example, on a typical fence job, I know that if I was using subcontractors, I would make about $1,500 from that job, and I the subs would get it done in the day for me, maybe 2 days max, right? Whereas if I was installing the fence, I would make about $2,500, but then I'd have to pay someone. So just say about $2,300, right? And it might take me a day or two to install. Okay. Now, yes, you're making more money on the front end, with the because I'm not paying all that labor out for the subcontractor. But the thing is, for me to go just quote a job, which is go out and drive out there, quote the job, and order the materials, do the quote, all that kind of shit, the max is like 2 hours worth of work. But if that job takes me 2 days to complete and I have to work 8 hours a day to do that, that's 16 hours plus the original 2 hours. So now I'm working 18 hours to make $2,200. Now, I would say, like, I don't have a calculator on me, but that's just say about $140, something like that, an hour, which is great. It sounds really good. But on the flip side, if I had subcontractors and I only made $1,500, but it took me 2 hours, that means I'm making $750 per hour just selling, right? Now, that means, again, I don't have a calculator on me, but I'm making about 5 times or more per hour just by selling, right? So, number one, I would not do that whatsoever. Number two, which I did with the other business, which I would do the same thing again, is figure out how to get as many leads as humanly possible, because that is the number one downfall for most of these contractors is they never have enough leads coming in. Now, what ends up happening if you don't have enough leads coming in, you will never charge what you need to charge. Never. Because if you're constantly, like, if you really need to get, like, I could work through all numbers, but if you need realistically like 2 and 3 calls a day, but you're getting like 2 and 3 calls a week, you will never charge the right amount to make your business less. You're going to charge less because you need to book that job. And if you don't book the one job out of 3 calls, you're going to drop your pricing on the other two, so that way you book some jobs. So at least you're busy, right? Because most contractors, they don't looking at how much profit they're making. They're just looking at, like, am I busy or not, right? So that's number one. So on the flip side, now if I have way too many leads coming in and I can barely handle the amount of leads coming in and we're just blowing up and we're crazy busy and everything else, what ends up happening is then I'm able to charge more and more and more, right? And this is what personally allowed me in my fence company, that when there was these plenty of guys coming out that is just a guy in a pickup truck, like how I used to be when I first started, if they were charging like $7,000 for a job and just say they were making that $2,000 profit because that's what they were, or $2,200 or whatever, I would go, instead of charging $7,000, I'd be charging like $8,500 or $9,000. So what would end up happening is, instead of making, again, like on that job, I would have made $1,500 because of, the subcontractor's labor. But now, instead of making $1,500, now I'm making like $3,000, $3,500, somewhere around there. And again, because I wasn't installing and I was just selling at that point, again, 2 hours for $3,500, like do the math, it's $1,700. What was happening is I was making more in an hour than they were installing that entire job, right? And it's not to brag, but it's just simple math. And it's like when we realize, and I guess this is another point, if I would have realized sooner, my mindset would have been there's four things that I had to worry about in the business. That's it. Just four. Instead of stressing about a million different things, there's four things. Okay. Number one, you need to get leads. You need to get people to know who the hell you are and get them to call you. That's number one. Number two, you have to sell the jobs. Number three, you have to produce the jobs. Number four, you need to know your numbers. Okay. Now, going with number two. So, number two, as far as selling the jobs, the one thing that I did that was really, really dumb was I was trying to reinvent the entire process of the sales cycle. And because what I was doing is my mindset was, how do I get people to book a job without even talking to them, right? Because at that point, I had someone else that was going out to do the quotes for me and things like that. Actually, we're selling everything over the phone. So we're quoting the projects over the phone and everything else. And then if they were okay with the price, then we would end up going out there, but we would charge us $75 to go out because that's what everyone is promoting, which is fine. You can do that. But like, we were like the highest priced company in the area. So what would end up happening is we would say, okay, it's $9,000. And because we had all these leads coming in, there's people that would say, okay, no problem, you can come out. But then what would end up happening is by the time we got out there, they probably had someone else come out, not probably, they had someone else come out for free. And instead of being $9,000, then they got a price of like $7,500. So at that point, they already feel like they got taken advantage of because they paid the $75 for us to go out. And then on top of that, we were $1,500 more expensive. And then on top of that, the person I had going out there was doing more of like a consultation. So they were just making sure where the fence is going, things like that. Never asked for the sale, never did a sales pitch, nothing, right? And so what would happen is our closing rate was under 8%. So that meant we had to talk to at least 12 people to book a job. 12. So what that did is it made a big issue where we had a ton of this labor spent for answering the phone calls and emails, going out the estimates, don't forget the gas and all this other kind of stuff. And our percentage was not high enough. So it was kind of like we're wasting all this money for no reason, right? So the other thing I would do is I would make sure my ass got out to the quotes. Now, obviously, you want to pre-qualify, and I would pre-qualify people over the phone first. So number one is I would find out why they want the fence. If there's no need for the fence, they are not buying the fence. No one is out there being like, I wonder, I think I feel like spending $8,000 on some shit I don't need today. Like, they don't do that, especially not on a fence. No one wants a fence. People get a fence when they need a fence. So if the fence is falling down, then the dog got out. If the fence is falling down, then kids are getting hurt or getting out. Or if the wife's complaining that the fence looks like shit, then maybe the husband will buy that fence. But other than that, if there is no need, there is no fence. Point blank. Because they don't want it. They'd rather spend it on other shit. I'd personally go on a vacation instead of spending that $8,000 on a fence. Me personally, right? So number one, find out if there's a need for the fence. Number two, find out the time frame. If they are going and like it's peak season, just say it's like May, you're super busy, and they're like, well, when you think about doing this project? And it's like, I was probably thinking like the beginning of the year. Well, sir, I will see you like in December because I am not going to waste my time and going out to a quote when you are not going to have your fence installed for the next 8 months. I am going to go to the people that are going to need the fence right away. Okay. So there's that. Other thing that I would do or continue to do is keep the lead times down as much as I possibly can. Why? Because if everyone else is booked out 3, 4, 5 weeks or whatever it is because they charge too little or they don't have the staff or whatever it may be, then I would keep my goal at like a week and two. Now, why would I do that? Because people will pay more for faster service. So again, that takes your projects, instead of being able to charge $8,000, you'll be able to charge $9,000 just because you can get it in so much faster than everyone else. Those are the main things I would do as a fence company if I was starting completely over. Now, it doesn't matter if you're doing this for a fence company, a deck company, a whatever. At this point, I signed paperwork that because I sold my fence company, that I am not allowed to start an installation, install fences, nothing for a period of 3 years. So that is completely off the books. But if I was going to do like if I went to start another business, like I got really bored, I'm like, just for the hell of it, let me do this. Like the same principles apply. It's the same thing, right? Because if I was going to do decks, it's the same thing. Get people to call you about the deck, sell the deck, get someone else to install the deck, and then know my numbers to make sure that I'm making enough money. Oh, speaking about money, one of the things that I didn't do for like the first like 4, 5 years of the business was I didn't charge enough. Okay. What ended up happening is I always wanted to stay in the middle range and I wanted to price the projects fairly. You know what I mean? Right. So what ends up happening is one, you don't make enough money per job. And like I said, most contractors have the issue where they don't have enough leads coming in. So you don't have enough leads coming in, then you're booking at these average prices compared to everyone else. Well, guess what? Everyone else doesn't know what the hell to charge either. They're like, oh my God, I'm making $1,000 a day. Well, they don't take out all the other crap that is associated with that, like between the truck payment, all the insurance, the gas, all the liabilities, all the times that like the job doesn't go as planned and you end up spending more money than you thought you would. So it's not a 800 or $1,000. It's not $800. It's like $700 you made, which you're like, it's still $700 in a day. Yeah, but you fucking worked like 10 hours to do that. So like, and then like you're killing yourself and then you're barely making any money on top of it. So you got that. So that's what I would personally do. Charge enough money. Oh, the other thing, because of charging enough money, is number one, obviously you're going to make more money. And if you realize that if you would have made $1,500 on a $6,000 job, if you would charge $6,500, now you're making that much more money. And it's not like, oh, I charged an extra 500, so I'm making an extra 500. You don't look at it that way. You actually look at the percentage, and I don't look at the percentage for most things. But if you look at the percentage of charging 6,000 and making 1,000, but charging 6,500 to make 1,500, it's not a $500 more in profit. You made 50% more in profit by charging the extra $500, which is next to nothing. So you charge an extra 8% to make an extra 50%. Like, think about it. It's crazy. And then on the flip side, it's even worse. So then you go like, I was charging 6,000 to make 1,500. Oh, but I dropped the price to $6,000 because like the person talked me into like charging that little bit. Well, what happened there? Well, you cut your profit by 50% at that point because you went from yeah. So you went from 1,000 to $500, right? You can't do that shit. So the other thing, besides making all that profit and everything else, is the more you charge. I wish I really would have learned this sooner. I really do. The more you charge, the less issues you have. Okay? For a few reasons. Number one, the people that want the cheapest price, they are a pain in the ass. They don't value what you do. They don't care. They just want it done and they want it cheap. And the fact that it's not done in 14 minutes and the fact that there's an issue here or there, they don't give a shit. They want it done. They want it done perfectly and for the dirt cheapest price, right? And it could be for a few reasons. Could be because they needed, like they don't have the money, whatever. It's a huge financial commitment, whatever it may be. So that's that. Whereas when you start charging more, people value it more. And you would think that by charging more, like they would be nitpicking more and more and more. But it's not like that. If you ever seen the meme where it's like, it's something like, hey, someone sent this text message and it's like, it's $5,000 for the project. And they're like giving them all a bunch of shit. And then there's another text message where it's like, your project's $25,000. And I'm like, all right, no problem, checks in the mail. Like, it's literally like that. There's so many less issues. Now, kind of speaking, last thing, because I always ramble, hopefully last thing, is that I would not ever again, because it only bites you in the ass every freaking time. And whenever I talk to any other contractor, they're like, yeah, as soon as I did this, I instantly regretted it because it was the worst customer I've ever dealt with. And I bet you already know what I'm talking about. That is, do not discount, do not match pricing ever. Why? The matching the price is the worst thing you could possibly do. The worst thing. And like for the I don't know exactly why it happens like this, but every time they are the biggest pain in the ass that you will ever deal with. Every single time. Now the only thing that kind of makes sense to me, and it just literally popped it into my head as I'm talking about this, is because so you and three like it's between three people went out, but like they really want to use you or this other person, but they really want you, but the other company's like $1,000 less for like a $10,000 job or whatever, and they're like, will you match the price? Sure. They like the only thing that kind of makes sense. One is they don't value your service. Like obviously, if they valued your service, they would go with your service, not some other companies that's based specifically on a price. It's kind of like car shopping. Like if I was looking at Mercedes and I was looking at like if I was looking for Mercedes and I'm going around and seeing what I want, and then there's this like Honda's next door. And like it's kind of like me going to the Mercedes place and it's like, look, I really want this car, but this one's only like is a quarter of the price, right? Well, it's still a car. Like they both have four tires. They have a steering wheel. There's gas gauge. There's all this shit. It's a car. Yeah, but you don't buy a Mercedes just because it's a car. If you did, like, it's just it feels like the same principle. The other thing is that think about the sales process. So like you match the price. So I'm thinking they might think that you're also matching the service. Well, what if the other contractor was a dipshit and they're promising all these things and they think subconsciously because you match the price, you must obviously be doing the same thing as they are. So anyway, those are the things that I would do and not do if I was starting a contracting business all over again. So, hope this was helpful in some sort of way, especially if you were getting started. And I hope you have an awesome day. I will talk to you soon. See ya.